just going to wait another. We're just going to wait a minute or two, just see if anybody else is still joining. And just for those that have joined already, just to note that this session is being recorded. We'll just give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we can get started. If you're happy, Aaron, are you happy to get started? And then I guess other people can join over the next minute or
Yeah,
so.
we're 2 minutes past. How many are we at now? We're at 12.
12.
So we'll give them one more minute,
Okay.
and then I'll let you give me a lovely introduction, Philippa, and we can go from there. Cool. Will we kick off?
Yeah, if you're happy to start.
Yeah.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. Just a little bit of quick housekeeping. This session will be recorded, so for anybody that doesn't wish to be recorded, I guess this is your opportunity to leave. We hope you don't, but we just like to let everybody know that this session is being recorded. And we do request that if anybody has any questions throughout the webinar, if you could kindly populate the chat box, and then we will start to make our way through those questions after Aaron has presented. So welcome to today's webinar. Really excited today to explore sustainable science and really learn a lot more about the My Green Lab certification, but also the ESG value impact to investors. We're delighted to open today's session on behalf of One Nucleus. And for those of you who don't know One Nucleus, we are a life sciences membership organisation. We are headquartered in Cambridge, but we connect innovators across the UK and beyond. Our mission is simple. It's to help companies grow, collaborate, and compete globally. And we do this by forming a strong network across science, business, and investment. Increasingly, what we've heard and observed from our members is that labs and research organisations are facing growing expectations from regulators, investors, and partners. And the ecosystem is increasingly prioritising sustainability metrics and ensuring that you align your lab operations with ESG strategies, which, quite frankly, is critical for success. So that's why we're super excited to run this webinar today. So we're joined today by Aaron Desmond from Impact Laboratories, which is a subsidiary of My Green Labs, and is the independent verification body for the My Green Labs certification. So My Green Labs, for those of you that don't know, is a global leader in advancing sustainability in science. They empower laboratories and organisations worldwide to reduce their environmental impact through measurable data-driven improvements. So together, My Green Lab and Impact Laboratories are setting the international benchmark for credible, independently verified sustainable lab operations, helping the scientific community integrate sustainability into everyday research and development. So I'm delighted to welcome Aaron, and I'll hand over to you to talk us through today's slides.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that very kind intro, Philippa. Yeah, look, I just want to very briefly say thank you to those of us who've joined today. I'm Aaron. I'm Aaron Desmond. I'm part of the business development team at Impact Labs. I look after a lot of the accounts we work with in terms of the UK and EU. I'm originally from Ireland, so if my talking speed is a little quick, please excuse me. I'll do my best to slow down and not get too excited. Um, but look, without further ado, we'll jump in. We're quite an intimate group today, so I'd encourage people to pop their questions in the chat box. But if you feel more comfortable meeting at a later date one-on-one, I can drop my email into the chat box as well. Fab. Okay, let me see if I can share, and we can get stuck in. Fabulous. Philippa, can you just confirm that that looks okay to you?
Yeah,
Can't
that
hear me.
looks great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. Okay, fab. So look, as I mentioned, I directly represent Impact Labs. Just want to kind of very quickly take a step back and look at how we work and what My Green Labs is. So My Green Lab was started about 13 years ago now, by a neuroscientist in California who, much like yourselves, was directly working in the lab, um, and knew how important her work was, but was really demoralized and I suppose deflated by just how resource intensive it can be, and how little thought had been given to the sustainable operations, of the work they were doing. So My Green Lab's mission then, as a nonprofit, is to build this global culture of sustainability. And I'll keep coming back to this today. That's really what we want to achieve here is growing this culture, and reaching as many people, getting the engagement from, as much of the scientific world as possible. Impact Labs then is a third party verifier, for My Green Lab. So not just the My Green Lab certification that I often kind of just focus in on, but also, houses the certification team, the business development team, and looks at many of our other products as well. I do want to just take a minute and focus on this third party verification. This is really core to our values. Um, we have become the gold standard really for lab sustainability, and that's through being trusted. Um, as a consumer myself, I'm open to greenwashing every day, and so people are more and more inclined to, be quite skeptical, to be honest with you, when people start talking about sustainability. The clear way to nullify, any ideas of greenwashing is to have these claims, to be third party verified. And so that's how we've been, so successful so far, and how we drive forward. Um, Look, My Green Labs have a whole host, of different programs, and again, it's all about this growth, of the movement. Of course, we have the My Green Lab certification that looks specifically at labs. Making an impact on the lab level is such an important way of working, with scientists, and being able to tailor, and work for everyone, whether it be a chemistry teaching lab in academia, or a R&D lab, in a small medium biotech. We want to be valuable to everyone. And so working at the lab level is really important. We also have the Act Eco label, which you may be familiar with, from your lab equipment or your consumables, reagents. This is a almost like a nutrition label for, lab products that really focuses on the transparency of the impact right the way through from the manufacturing stage, through the life cycle. Looking specifically then at individuals, we have the accredited professional and the ambassador program. These are looking at really educating lab members. Anyone working in the science sector should be looking at these as a nice way of introducing yourself to sustainability and then really digging into the core modules. I will flag as well the accredited professional program. We have done, a nice discount for any members of One Nucleus. So feel free to reach out to myself or the guys at One Nucleus to, take advantage of that. And then we have other education and engagement programs as well. The Freezer Challenge, which we run at the beginning of every year, to really focus on, good practice with freezers, one of the biggest users of electricity in the lab. And our Converge Supplier Initiative, which looks at working with CROs and CDMOs to really tackle the full impact, on the sustainable supply chain. Um, and look, we're a global organization, but ultimately Europe has been, at the head of everything that we've done in the last couple of years. There's such a clear shift in the scientific community to support this program, to move towards more sustainable operations. Um, and there's many reasons for it. You know, we're going to address today the impact that it has, that ESG has for investors, but also looking at, the public, your ability to apply for grants, and global compliance as well, is really important. The UK specifically, we're really proud to say is right the way up at the top. So we can see just how many certifications, how many ambassadors and freezer challenge members we've had. It's growing all the time. We're growing at an almost exponential rate. And it's very clear that within the UK, organizations from pharma, from biotech, whether it be academia, now the introduction of clinical labs as well, and from very different fields, whether it's food and agriculture or water treatment companies, environmental testing, or drug discovery. There is really clear value in this program for anyone involved in wet lab work in the scientific community. Very importantly today, I think we should look at why it matters to investors that this program exists, and the importance of ESG. Um, Importantly, and just to begin with, this is all about confidence. Investment is all about confidence, and having strong ESG commitments really inspire confidence in investors. It demonstrates strong risks management and governance as well, and reducing any perceived risk that you can do really boosts investor trust. Um, it also enhances the access of small and medium biotech to capital, increasing your eligibility for sustainable or impact focused funds. But also, ESG compliance is now a key feature for much of the venture capital and institutional funding as well. We can look at a couple of examples in a minute. Um, for small, emerging, medium biotechs, we really need to strengthen your reputation and market position. Um, Look, sustainability is such a nice thing to be able to be involved in morally, but we have to look at every factor that this involves and every stakeholder involved in something like this. Reducing risks with reputation and regulatory risks is really, really important. And building trust with partners and the wider public, especially in pharma and biotech, is also a key aspect of getting further investment. And ultimately, we need to attract top talent. We're growing companies, often rapidly, and organizations with strong ESG commitments at their core appeal to the new generation of scientists and leaders. And of course, strong teams with the best recruitment can deliver strong results. So, looking at global regulations, then there's a very clear shift in the last 5, maybe 3 years, and clearly we're seeing more to come too. The CMA, the ASA in the UK, are now fining companies who might um, uh, sorry, breach claims with regards to sustainability. It's really important to have your claims backed up by a third party. In the EU wider as well, we're seeing this. The EU Green Claims Directive will nullify any idea of people having their own sustainability claims verified internally. It has to be verified externally. And the same shift is happening right the way through the rest of the globe. Recent litigation has come across in the US, in Canada, and EMEA wider as well. And that's why we want to talk about the credibility of this program. It really has become the gold standard for lab operations, and a clear indicator of continuous improvement in lab sustainability. This program is backed by the UN Race to Zero. We're recommended by the US EPA. Many of you or your lab members will have come through the UK academics. Two of the largest grant bodies, the Wellcome Trust and the CR UK, require a certification like this as of 2026 to be accessible for any grants. So there's a very clear shift. And market demand shows it as well. We ran this study with Frost and Sullivan and Agilent, a survey on lab influencers and managers. The stats are very clear to see. I'm more than happy to share more in-depth insight, but the valuation of sustainability, the importance of independent certifications is very clear to labs. And there's already a shift. We can see 82% of labs are already implementing sustainable measures. It's now time to have those measures verified, ratified by an external body, so that you can market these things, you can bring them to external events and really get the credit that you're due. Um, Bringing it back, I suppose, to a more simple view on everything, it's very clear why we need to make these changes. Labs are so resource intensive when we compare the square footage to something like an office. 10 times more energy is used, 4 times more water. I think we're all well aware now, but the stat is between 2 and 3% of global plastic waste is coming from labs. And when we think about that being made up of your nitrile glove or a Eppendorf tube, they're really small aspects, but clearly make up a large amount. And so, what's encouraging about all of this is that we can make small, logical, and intuitive steps, on a lab level, and over the space of 1, 2, 3 years, can make a really large impact on that. I wanted to quickly cover as well before we dig further into the actual My Green Lab certification. We've had massive uptake of this program. We're now working with almost 5,000 labs, 42 of the top 50 pharma companies. And oftentimes how we'll see this propagate is a pilot will be run in a lab. They'll see just how much impact it can make, how much value they get from it. And organizations will commit to having this rolled out to all labs. Some of the names on here are just a few. What we have seen, however, is that this mainly focuses on an organization's scope 1 and 2 emissions. The scope 3 emissions, those indirect or supply chain emissions that we now have to account for, make up a large percentage of your organization or any organization's emissions. And so that's where we've come up with this converged supplier initiative. We're working with the largest organizations to ensure that their service providers, their CROs, their CDMOs, anyone who wishes to work with these large pharma companies, they need to have a certification too. It's a very easy way for the likes of Amgen or AstraZeneca or BMS to turn around and know that your organization is working in the most sustainable manner they can. And so it's a very clear indicator that you're the kind of company they want in their ESG totals. Um, a very final look at why we should be working towards My Green Lab certification. If ISO 14001 is on your radar, if it's something your lab is looking to achieve, we can align with that. The My Green Lab certification demonstrates an ongoing environmental improvement, which is exactly what you need to achieve ISO certification. So just a bonus in that regard. Focusing then on the My Green Lab certification, that's really what is my bread and butter, I guess. Um, this program has come from what we've seen already. The need, whether it be your investors, your public facing entity, even the morale and the ideas of the lab members themselves. There's a need for this certification. And so the My Green Lab certification looks specifically at the lab level. Um, by doing this, we can get really granular insight into how you work, but also take a step back and approach it in a more holistic manner. By looking at these 14 key themes that we look at here, we can make small, logical, and intuitive steps achievable for your lab, not huge investment required, but that add up to a really big impact over the period of 1 or 2 years. And so we can generate a really large return on investment. What we're typically seeing is about a 5x return on investment for companies. We can reduce the amount of hazardous chemicals coming in contact with your lab members, a health and safety budget, benefit rather. Um, and then again, about employee engagement, boosting your recruitment, but also boosting the morale in the lab. Getting more people involved is really key to this. And again, comes back to that sustainability culture. Just a quick case study to have a look at. GSK ran a pilot with three labs, one not too far from Stevenage, and then two in Belgium. They saw a 14x return on investment in the first year of running this program. And these aren't in large labs, about 15 individuals usually. But these savings are coming from your energy costs, your water costs. By reducing these things, we can really generate a lot of savings because energy is so expensive now, and water does have a cost associated. And these are simple steps that can be made by any lab, but is just a really nice one to be able to come back to and refer to. The My Green Lab certification has been around for quite a while now, but at the beginning of 2025, we revamped the whole program, really looking to focus on two main problems, I guess, that we've had previously. The time required, an investment in this, and then just how much data you can generate from the program. So we've really built this program now around three key pillars, all designed on one user-friendly software. But those will be the engagement survey, the assessment tool, and then the impact estimator. The engagement survey is really the beginning of all of this. This is where we get your whole lab engaged with a really simple step, about a 10 to 12-minute survey, multiple choice question. But this is where we kind of gauge the knowledge level of everyone involved in the lab and see where the areas might be lacking, whether it's with regards to your waste streams or the organizational strategy with regards to sustainability, whether it's to do with your plug load energy and the operating procedures with regards to that. This is really the first step and engages as much of the lab as possible. The assessment tool then is really the hub of the whole program. This is your project management tool, your framework software that allows you to see exactly what is relevant to your lab, allows you to tick off exactly what you've done and track your progress through the program. It's a really motivating thing to be able to see your lab gain points all the time towards a higher and higher certification. And then our impact estimator. This is where we get our data for case studies, where we see the return on investment. Using this tool, we can give you regionally specific data for your energy costs, for your water, for your energy, for your waste, and then calculate based on the steps you've made, whether that's, the one we always come back to, temping up your -80 freezer to -70, a really simple one. But we can then calculate out for you how much energy you're forecast to save in the coming year based on that step, the cost of energy in your region, and the carbon tonnage associated with it. It's such a nice thing to be able to provide to a finance department, a management suite, even your lab members to turn around and say to them, yes, you've spent, a couple more minutes with this task in your day, but look at what you've generated from it. Being able to provide data to scientists who hold it above all else is such an important thing. So it's something we're really proud of being able to offer. With regards to this platform as well, we have three user profiles. So we have, of course, your lab members, your personnel. The only engagement they'll have with this software platform is that engagement survey. And so a very simple thing, a portal that can be accessed via the mobile. We then ask for a lab lead. This is your project lead for the lab, maybe somebody who is in a facility operator role, somebody who's particularly keen with regards to sustainability. But this is the person who really tracks the progress of the lab and keeps that software updated. Typically, time commitment for this, about 2 to 3 hours per month. So really, really simple stuff. And then if you're an organization with multiple labs, we have an organizational admin view. And so in this sense, we'll be able to see the impact of all labs in one dashboard, a cumulative effect, whether that's with regards to financial savings or looking to kind of compare and contrast how labs are performing across each of the themes we spoke about a little earlier. So that's really the pillars of this certification. Um, then the path to certification, what does it look like from your lab joining us to getting that nice plaque at the end and being able to kind of show off to your competitors or the public in general. It typically takes a lab about 6 to 9 months to run through this program. At the end of that program, you then get your certificate, and that's valid for 2 years from that point. So it's this model of continuous improvement. We want you to come back in 2.5, 3 years' time to recertify and to see if you can get a better score. Sustainability in science is an ever-moving target. We'll have new things for you to do. You'll have new ways that you're working, and so the kind of cycle goes on. With regards to those 6 to 9 months, then it can be broken down into three simple steps: your baseline step, your implementation, and then your certification. The baseline involves again that engagement survey we spoke about, getting your lab lead on board and training them on the software platform. This part is really about tailoring the process to your lab, making sure we're taking up as little time as possible. We're well aware that everyone has a day job already, but really toggling on and off what is and isn't relevant. So whether that's with regards to pieces of equipment in the lab, or areas of science, if animal research isn't something you're doing, we toggle it off. It's not going to be something you have to look at or deal with. And so once that's complete, we've got a really good idea of how the lab's processes work and where the lab's knowledge level is at. We can then move you into the implementation phase where we feed you all of these different training initiatives, changes, tweaks to your procedures and processes that will give you this measurable impact. I want to stress that really these are logical and intuitive steps we're talking about here, many of which you might already have in place in the lab. Sustainability in labs, I'm sure if you're here, is already a well looked at area. So if you have things already in place in the lab, if you've got a take back scheme with a supplier or a recycling scheme, these are things that we will validate. We're not starting you off at zero here. We want to ratify the work that you've already done, and make sure you get the credit that you're due for it. And so using our assessment tool and using the impact estimator, you'll be able to track your progress continuously and again generate that impact, that measurable impact all the way through the program. That's the real meat of the program. It takes typically about 6 to 8 months, or 3 to 6 months rather, to run through. At which point you can then submit for certification. So here we ask the lab members to retake the engagement survey. It's a really rewarding thing to see the jump in education level over such a short period of time, but right the way across your team, to see these survey answers really improve and kind of come together, I guess. But we will perform a risk-based assessment then on the documentation you've uploaded to the software platform. And again, you get your certificate, and you're good for 2 years from that point. So it's a really simple process. There are multiple levels then with regards to the certification. We've never had anyone fail, so don't be worried with regards to that. The real difference here is based on the engagement. How much of this program is run by one person is really easy to tell if you're going to be at those lower levels. And we want to see the whole lab engaged, everyone thinking about sustainability. And that again brings us back to this idea of the growth of sustainability. If it's just one person trying to carry a project like this through an organization, you can get burnout, but also if that person leaves, if they're sick or out for some reason or another, the program falls apart. What we want is for everyone to get engaged and then this to organically grow through your own organization and then to neighboring ones as well. I think it's a really nice one to look at is this impact estimator. And because we can't dig into the platform today, I thought it would be good to have a screenshot. Um, what you can see here is regionally specific data for your electricity, for your water, and for your waste costs. And so those are geolocated based on your lab's location. Um, what you'll be able to do again is, something as simple as shutting the sash on your fume hood. That will come up in the assessment tool if you have fume hoods. And if you've managed to put a process in place where lab members are shutting the sash, then you'll get your points towards certification through the assessment tool. You can then come into this impact estimator, log that step as well, say with two fume hoods, and we'll be able to calculate for you the energy savings that those steps have had, the cost of the energy that you've got in your region, and then again the carbon tonnage associated to it. It really all adds up to this lovely projected figure at the end of the year, and that you can export, that you can share with your investors, with your team, with your finance department, and via LinkedIn, with the public as well. What I will say is this is an estimate. It's a good estimate, but it is an estimate. So what we've designed here is that you can also change these data points. So if you know exactly how much your organization is paying for electricity, if you know that your fume hood is particularly efficient, you can change those points of data and again get even more accurate results projected. Um, And so, yeah, I just want to bring it back to kind of the growth of this program and the validity, I guess, that brings with it. It's very clear that Europe and the US are the spearhead of this movement. Not often am I happy to have out of date slides, but we're actually closer now to 5,000 labs engaged. And again, it's a global effort. We're with 52 countries now. So it's a really nice thing to see. I mentioned a little earlier, we're working with huge biotech and the kind of leaders in that field. You can see here the names in bold are have committed to an organizational wide rollout as well. Um, so just to finish up, I want to say thank you very first of all, but I want to just look again at the benefits that this program can bring to your lab and your organization. We're building this culture of sustainability in the lab, and from this point, from this standpoint that you're at right now, when you're looking to grow so much, it's such a nice thing to really ingrain from the beginning. We get to increase the collaboration and engagement of your teams. Whether it's with regards to sustainability, ultimately it's bringing people together, and allows, conversations and discourse on all topics in the lab. We're promoting innovation, but we're also providing a healthier work environment for the lab, looking at those tenets of green chemistry, and reducing the amount of hazardous chemicals in the lab. We can save money and resources. If you're a lab member, the electricity bill might not be your top concern, but it is a really nice thing to remember that there's a carbon emission associated with that. And so looking at those data points is a rewarding thing. Um, your lab will get public engagement and recognition. We want you to shout from the rooftops when you get your certification, and we help you in doing so, using our platform, using our network, our newsletter as well. And then ultimately, you can be a model for other labs. You can be seen at really the cutting edge of sustainability, and clearly a very valued part of our network. So again, thank you very much for having me. I'd love to take as many questions as possible now, but if you'd rather, I can also pop my email into the chat box, and we can go from there. Fantastic.
Aaron, do we have any questions, or is there anything you would like to ask about this session? I think we just had a couple of questions in the chat
Yeah, please.
box. What do you mean by lab, in inverted commas? A physical room, a set of rooms with similar workflows, a department, etc. So I'll let you answer that first. There's another question following that.
Absolutely. Look, it's a great question. There is no strict definition of a lab. We want to work with as many areas of science as possible. And so, you know, in a clinical setting, a lab can be 150 people. For those in incubator sites, it can be three. So what we typically say here is we want a lab to be a group of individuals working on the same theme of science, sharing equipment, and meeting regularly. So really, when you think about it in that regards, it's more of a team. Um, the idea again about working on the lab level is because if you have a lab that looks at QC and then you have another lab that's working on R&D, the processes and pieces of equipment will differ quite a bit. And so we want to be able to, again, give you that granular insight and really valuable data. And so that's where the separation comes. But ultimately, look, more than happy to work with you guys as best as possible. And again, it's a flexible term.
Thanks, Aaron. And the next question is, which data or material can or cannot be used for marketing purposes?
Um, that's a great question. So, look, ultimately, your data is your data. So we want you to be open and transparent about it all. Um, Once you receive your certification, we're happy for you to, we actually provide you with a marketing package and really kind of try to empower you in that regard. But we have had partners share their savings in terms of kilowatt hours. We've had them um, share their carbon savings as well, and of course certification level. But if there's anything in particular that you're thinking about, do let me know, and we can do that as well.
Another question is, what qualifications do the certificates have?
The certifiers, as in our certification team, I presume that is speaking of. Yeah, the look, our certification team are working towards a lot of ISO standards. Um, we're actually we fall under the umbrella of ASI. So this is um, it's not an organization you'll come across a lot, but it is something that is very recognizable. If you think about the MSc or the FSc, who look at marine and forestry sustainability certifications, they're the same people who we have worked with. So our certifiers have worked with, look, a huge amount of labs, and will have every qualification that you need in that regard.
And we've had a question from Amy. Is the MGL survey you've just talked through MGL 2.0, or is that something different?
Yeah, so 2.0 is everything that we just looked at there. So those three pillars is really the second generation of the program. So it involves the survey part, but also the software platform, the impact estimator tool. These are all updates that we've had as part of the 2.0 certification. Yeah.
And that's all the questions that we have in the chat box. Unless anybody else would like to ask Aaron anything else, still have time for a couple of questions if anyone has any. That might be it. There's something else that's come through. Super. I guess if anybody doesn't have any further questions, then we can sort of, I guess, summarise today's event. I guess I just wanted to thank you, Aaron, for what has been a really insightful session. I think what's really stood out for me is I'm particularly pleased to see that the UK is doing really, really well. But I think it's so important that we maintain that momentum. It's great that we are featuring so high on some of those lists, but, we need to work together to make sure we maintain that. I think it's definitely been a really important reminder of how ESG can build investor confidence. And I think we can all agree in the challenging funding climate, that has to be, a key priority, let's be honest. I think the approach definitely strengthens and builds trust. And as you alluded to, It's about attracting the best talent for your business to be successful. I think definitely when people look at jobs and look at new organisations, sustainability is such a high priority, particularly in some of the work generations that we see coming into the market. I think it's definitely evident that the lab certificate is an empowering process. And I like the calculator. I think it's really good to see those tangible benefits because sometimes you can go through these processes, tick all these boxes, but you can't see, what is that impact. So I think to have some key measures, I think is really critical and great for people reporting that back to teams. And so forth. So it's great to see that return on investment. And I particularly like the different levels. It takes me back to my Duke of Edinburgh days, but I like that because I think, let's be honest, we're all competitive at heart, aren't we? So I think it's good to sort of go through those different levels. I guess before you have any sort of closing thoughts, Aaron, just in terms of housekeeping for you all attending, the recording and the slides will be shared with everyone afterwards, so you can sort of work through the information and the recording. I would definitely recommend reaching out to Aaron if you'd like to continue this discussion. Aaron's just put his email address in the chat, but we can also share that in the follow-up email if you're happy with that, Aaron. So I would definitely, if you're keen to continue those discussions, do reach out to Aaron. I know he'd be very keen to speak with you all. And yeah, I just wanted to say a huge thank you. I think this has been such an interesting session. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else has. So really appreciate your time, Aaron, and don't know if you've got any sort of closing thoughts that you'd like to add.
I just want to say thank you very much to everyone. We're now part of one nucleus, My Green Lab, and so you'll be seeing a lot more of us around here. But please do feel free to reach out to myself or through Philippa. Yeah, always happy to chat everything sustainability.
Super.
Brilliant.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you
Enjoy the
very
rest of
much.
your day. Thank you
Have a
so much,
lovely day.
Aaron. Take care, everyone. Bye.